Without faith, we have nothing. Faith believed that statement with all her heart, and not just because it was something her husband Joshua, whom she still called Benny, would say to her. After all, Faith had brought them together in high school. Faith had seen them through some tough times in college, and Faith had helped them build a beautiful life and family together after marriage. Now she was 34 years old. With each passing moment, she found herself falling deeper and deeper in love with Benny. He was exactly that kind of guy, and he was all hers. Faith Mie, keep your eyes closed, she heard Benny say from just inside the doorway. They are closed. It was early morning, and she was sitting up in bed, having just awakened to find that her husband had already risen. A moment later, she felt him place something that felt suspiciously like a tray on her legs. Okay, you can open your eyes, he said. She did and saw it was indeed a breakfast tray bearing freshly squeezed orange juice, bacon, and a gigantic red velvet pancake in the shape of a heart. Aw, thank you, honey, Faith said. Happy anniversary, Faith Mie. This year, I thought I'd beat you to it. She smiled at him. The year before, she had surprised him with breakfast in bed. And this year, he turned the tables. Happy anniversary. Care to join me? Unfortunately, I've got an early business meeting to get to. Remember, though, I've got big plans set for this evening. Be ready. Are you sure you don't want to give me the tiniest hint about what we're doing? Not even, he said with a laugh. This is going to be an anniversary to remember. Every day with you is one to remember, Faith said sweetly. Over the years, Benny had given Faith many memorable occasions. The life he built with her reflected his unfailing love. Benny had loved Faith with all his being since the first day they met in high school. He adored her, and she loved him just as much in return. She was looking forward to making another memory tonight. Benny appeared touched by Faith, acknowledging that life with him was special. Maybe I should stay, he teased flirtatiously. But you have a meeting. You're right. I guess I'll just dine and dash, he said with a mischievous smile as she stole a piece of her bacon and then ran for the door. Hey, Faith called after him. She could hear Benny laughing as he headed down the stairs. She felt a twinge of sadness as she heard the front door close behind him. 16 years ago today, they had eloped. For a courthouse wedding, the ceremony was very elegant and tastefully performed, the best that $250 could buy. Their friend Cliff stood in as both the best man, and attendant for the bride. Every anniversary since, Benny would go out of his way to make it more special, more romantic than the previous year. Faith appreciated his efforts. Today, she and the kids were working in the garden. There was a lot to do before his mysterious anniversary surprise. As she grabbed a piece of bacon for herself, Faith marveled at how fast time went. It seemed like just yesterday they'd met at school when he'd been the new kid, and she'd been instantly smitten at only 14 years old. She was still just as smitten 20 years later. She reminisced about their first non-school date, smiling in her heart as she pictured the gigantic teddy bear Benny had won for her at the annual carnival. It was also the same night he'd finally told her the meaning of her mysterious nickname, Faith Mie. He would often look at her from across the room and mouth, Mie. He loved to use it in the presence of company to create a secretive, intimate moment. Faith Mie, he'd say, are you ready to go? Those who didn't know her thought that Mie was her middle name. She finished her breakfast and then prepared breakfast for the kids. There was a lot to do, but she kept drifting back to thoughts of Benny, wondering what he had in store for the evening. It was the end of summer, which was always one of Faith's favorite time of year. The fact that her anniversary fell on August 28 was only partly responsible for that. She loved recalling the bounty and beauty the summer season brought, and then anticipating the promises autumn held. As much as she loved each season, she had a special place in her heart for fall. She and Benny had eloped at the end of summer, just as the beginning of harvest season was upon them. Just as notable was the inspiring beauty that came with the turning of the leaves. So many people were reminded of death when they noticed the colored leaves falling from the trees. But faith saw a promise of the coming resurrection. Only things were made new. All things were made new, but only after a time of shedding and pruning. It was also about time for the weather to turn cooler. She mopped her brow. It was 90 degrees outside, which wasn't as bad as it could be. The hot, humid Texas summers were enchanting, but could also be a challenge, especially when you were trying to keep anything alive. Faith smiled as she tended her garden. The tomatoes were ripe and would be delicious in a salad for dinner the next night. Everything was coming along nicely and right on schedule. She'd been thinking a lot about change recently. Her youngest was about to start preschool. It was a huge step, both exciting and a little frightening. She would now have a handful of hours during the week that was completely her own. She hadn't had that for a long time. Faith always imagined she would live to be 100, as several members of previous generations of her family had. She was officially one-third of the way through her life. The first season had been about growing, just like a seed in her garden. Now it was time to focus more on shaping her life and herself. She wanted to be more purposeful in how she lived. As her children were starting to grow and find themselves, it was time she did more of that as well. She had been thinking a lot about her dad and how she wanted to honor his memory by increasing his work to provide affordable housing in urban communities. Over time, she'd expanded that dream to center around single mothers who were homeless as well as survivors of domestic abuse or abject poverty. Faith knew from listening to her dad that children would be better equipped to meet the future if they were being raised in safe and decent housing. Faith's dad had died too soon to guide her step by step through the process of accomplishing this vision. Now that all her kids would be in school, she thought about undertaking work that would make her feel good about herself and honor his memory. She heard footsteps and turned to see her youngest child, Amelia Shaban, running toward her. The 4-year-old was carrying a small basket with 4 peaches in it. Amelia was a joy to behold. She was bright and cheerful with her mother's good looks and beautiful hair. In fact, she was so much like her mom that Benny often called her Little Faith. Mama, there are more peaches than I can eat, Amelia said. More than we all can eat, Buck said, walking behind her and lugging a basket that was overflowing. Buck was the oldest of the 3 children at 12 years old. His given name was Shane Ethan Strong, but because he almost died at birth and then survived the odds, his dad called him Buck. Faith called him her gift from God. Joshua Francis Jr. appeared with an armful of peaches and a silly grin on his face. 9-year-old Joshua bore his daddy's name, but everyone called him Junior. It didn't bother Buck that he didn't have his daddy's first name. He understood why. His own name had a special meaning that made him proud. To be called Buck was like a badge of honor. Faith felt her greatest blessing in life was having these 3 gems called her mom. They were highly intelligent, grounded, happy, uncorrupted by a sense of entitlement, and thoughtful. She and Benny were well on their way to accomplishing the goal they set for themselves as parents to raise kids who were appreciative of the gifts God gave to them and eager to share their blessings with those who were in need. You're right, there are more than we can eat, What do you think we should do with the extras? Faith asked innocently as she looked at each of her children in turn. I think we should take them to the kitchen, Buck said. He was referencing the community kitchen where they volunteered once a month. Faith had grown up wanting for nothing. She had always reasoned that was why she wanted to reach out and help those who had so little. Maybe I can do more volunteer work and help those who are less fortunate, Faith thought. Something in that idea appealed to her greatly. It also seemed like a worthy use of her upcoming free time. The more she thought about her new plans, the more excited she became. First, she would inquire about working with nonprofits that provided housing and shelter for the homeless. Then she would put the wheels in motion to develop a business plan that focused on building the houses she dreamed of for single parents and for women who were victims of domestic violence. No matter what Faith did, she would incorporate having a community garden because she felt people, especially children, deserve to eat nutritious and wholesome food. She glanced down at her children, who were looking up at her eagerly, waiting for her answer. Taking them to the kitchen is a great idea. I'm sure they'd love to have these peaches, Faith said, proud of her three children. And we could print out Bible verses and tape one to each peach, Junior suggested. I love that idea, Faith said, my son the pastor. Due to his sensitive nature and concern for others, she had always thought of her middle child that way. He beamed at her in response to her words. To educate the mind without educating the heart is quite the epitome of ignorance, Junior said, quoting words his father repeated often. Before Faith could respond, she heard her husband's voice behind her. Glad that someone listened to what I say, Benny said teasingly. The three children nearly dropped their peaches in their scramble to greet him. Faith hastily rose, dusting off the knees of her slacks, before moving closer to give him a kiss. You're home early, Faith said in a surprise. Am I, Faith Mie? Benny asked mischievously. Or are you late getting ready? What on earth do you have planned? She asked, her excitement rising. I guess you'll just have to wait and see. In the meantime, who wants ice cream? Three kids began to clamor at once. All right, ice cream sundaes in the kitchen. The kids ran ahead of them as Faith began walking toward the house, holding hands with her husband. You are full of surprises today, she said. You have no idea. Inside the house, the kids were already digging into giant sundaes that Benny must have made before coming outside to get them. In the middle of the kitchen counter was a massive spray of red roses in a delicate porcelain vase adorned with small red glitter hearts and their names, Faith and Joshua. It made sense that he put Joshua instead of Benny because that was how he thought of himself since he changed his name. It was also the name on their marriage license. She was one of only two people who still insisted on calling him Benny. The aroma from the roses filled the air with a sweet perfume, and Faith closed her eyes to breathe it in. She was convinced this was what heaven would smell like. Happy anniversary, Faith Mie, Benny said. Happy anniversary, my husband of 16 years, she said, slowly opening her eyes. I'll be honest, the vase costs more than the flowers, he admitted. Then I'll treasure it always. I'll treasure you always, Benny said. I should go get your present, Faith offered. Bring it with us. I can open it later tonight. You really want to carry around a new grill all night? His eyes widened in surprise. Did you get me a new grill? She took several seconds to answer, letting the suspense build. No, but I could have. He chuckled and kissed her cheek. Is it smaller than a bread box? And does it weigh less than a bowling ball? Yes and yes. Then bring it with us. Hello in the house, a deep voice boomed out. Faith turned around the screen door to see. Faith turned toward the screen door to see Cliff. Uncle Cliff, Amia shouted as she abandoned her ice cream to run into his arms. Cliff opened the door and came inside, all smiles as he hugged Amia. I see someone is celebrating something. Let me guess. It's National Red Flowers Day. Faith couldn't help but smile. Cliff knew well enough what day it was. He had arrived to babysit while they went out, although he was 3 hours ahead of the expected time. So, Cliff, why are you here so early? Faith asked, nudging his arm. Nope, sworn to secrecy. Scared, sacred oath and all that, he said, miming, lock, miming locking up his lips and throwing away the key. You're both impossible, Faith said. Amia turned around, letting go of Cliff. Mommy, go put on your pretty dress. The purple one? No, your pretty dress, Amia requested. I thought that was the pretty one. I think she means your party dress, Benny said gently. Oh, you mean the black dress? Faith asked, even more intrigued. That dress was reserved for very formal occasions, few as they were. That's the one. Benny loved Faith's black party dress. When she wore it, the crepe fabric stretched over her hips, accentuating every curve in her slender, statuesque body. Faith knew her husband loved it, and she wore it just to tease him. It was simple, elegant, fashionable, and provocative. The back of the floor-length sleeveless dress concealed a nylon zipper that started at her neckline and terminated at the small of her back. The front of the A-line scooped-necked silhouette was symmetrically designed to flatter her hips and show off her legs. A ruffled split on each side from the floor to above her knees cascaded to the floor. The dress had a hint of flair so that when she danced, the dress moved in sync with her graceful rhythms. Tonight she would sport 2 strands of sleek, oyster-colored pearl necklaces. Benny presented her with them to commemorate the occasion of Buck coming home from the hospital. They were embellished with diamonds interspersed every 3 or 4 beads. The pearls were long enough to wrap twice around her neck, but instead, Faith tied a knot in them so she could twirl them at will. 4-inch black sequin designer pumps and a matching sequin clutch completed her ensemble. Yes, Faith wanted tonight to be a special and memorable occasion. Her black dress was just the incentive she needed for both. She ran upstairs to shower and shine, breathless with anticipation. When she finished, she returned downstairs and gave a little twirl as Amia clapped her hands in approval. Faith picked her up, and Amia fingered the diamonds amidst the pearls. The pearl dress, Amia said, ogling shiny stones. So it is, Faith said, kissing Amia's hand before setting her back down. My turn, Benny said, heading for the stairs. Ready for your first surprise? Benny asked. Yes, Faith exclaimed. Keep your eyes closed tightly. She did as he instructed. Now open them. Faith saw Benny when she opened her eyes and couldn't help but admire how well his black suit fit him. He had let her out. He had led her outside, but she was entranced with how handsome he looked, that she wasn't paying attention to her surroundings. Your chariot awaits, Benny said, as he positioned her in the direction of the limo that was slowly approaching. What is this, Ben? She asked in amazement. This is our car. We will be chauffeured for the entire night. Oh, it's going to be an amazing evening. Faith barely managed to get words out through her excitement. Oh my God, I can't wait for this night to unfold. Faith had tried unsuccessfully on the drive into Galveston Bay to guess their destination. At last the car stopped, and the driver opened the door. Benny was standing there to lead her, making her promise to keep her eyes closed. They walked several yards. She was in heels, but his arm was steady beneath her hand, and she had complete faith in him to steer her where she should walk. Okay, this part is a bit tricky, so open your eyes, Benny said. She did as instructed and saw an exquisite cruising yacht in front of them. He helped her step onto the deck. I booked a private sunset cruise down Galveston Bay, he said. Oh, my goodness, Faith gasped, realizing this exclusive cruise must have been extremely expensive. Well, actually, it's not 100% private, Benny said with a smirk, pointing to a jazz string quartet backing up a pianist already on board. Champagne was on ice, chilling in the cooler. Hors d'oeuvres of fresh fruits, olives, and cheese squares accompanied the champagne. The yacht pushed off a minute later, and once they were underway, the musicians started playing a medley of familiar songs from from across multiple genres. All the songs were handpicked by Benny, perfect for the most romantic of evenings. "They're playing our song," Benny said with a cheesy smile as he spun her into his arms and began to dance. They continued dancing as they cruised down the bay, just the two of them, hand in hand. They brought all their best moves, swing, slow drag, where Faith buried her head on Benny's shoulder, the slide, tango. What an amazing time they shared. Faith could not believe the night could get any better. When the yacht docked, Benny took Faith by the hand and walked her to the car. The chauffeur opened the door and made sure she was secure in her seat. "That was so much fun," Faith told Benny when they were back in the car. "The fun's not over, Faith, B.A.," Benny promised with a sly grin. "I sincerely do not know how on earth you're going to top the yacht," Faith said. "Just wait," he said, winking at her. "Just wait." About 40 minutes later, the chauffeur placed the car in park and began helping Faith out. She looked at the restaurant sign and gasped, "Are you kidding? Brenna's on the bayou? I've always wanted to eat here," Faith exclaimed. "I know," Benny said with a grin as he offered her his arm. She took it and strolled next to him, feeling like the luckiest woman in the world. The restaurant was famous for its food, its aesthetics, its setting, and a beautiful waterfall that emptied into a pond stocked with expensive exotic fish. The best thing of all was Benny bought out the entire restaurant for the night. It was just the two of them again with a band from the past. Benny had brought the band back together for the night. The band he played Benny had brought the band back together for the night, the band he played with during college. Just seeing the guys again brought tears to Faith's eyes. As the maitre d' escorted them to their table in the center of the room, Faith whispered to Benny how happy she was and thanked him for this one-night escape from reality. After they ordered, they spent a few minutes gazing at each other and making small talk. It was moments like these that she loved and cherished. She could talk to her husband about anything, no matter how important or insignificant. The waiter cleared away their salad plates, and a moment later brought their main courses. Benny had ordered the rack of lamb, and she decided to try the Peking duck. She took a bite of her duck and was delighted to discover that the skin was crispy while the meat was juicy. It made for a wonderful combination. The restaurant was living up to its reputation. The blend of food and ambience excited a moment of rapture that she would never forget. So you have to finish. Oh, let me read this one. For 2 hours after dinner, the band played oldies from their past. They danced to the rhythm of songs that kindled romance. Benny sat face down and then joined the band. He sang Isaac Hayes and Dionne Warwick's rendition of My Eyes Adore You, among other songs. Benny's voice was stage quality. Had he wanted to do so, he could have successfully pursued a career in entertainment. When the band finished, Faith interrupted their packing and asked if they would play one song so she could honor her husband. The song she requested was one of Benny's favorite songs and the one they danced to as king and queen of the high school prom. Faith sat Benny down and gave the band a cue to start. They started to play If. She moved to the rhythm of the music with poise and grace. There was a certain savoir-faire about Faith that made Benny proud. She knew that the way she moved her hips and twirled on her toes aroused Benny. When the music stopped and she walked toward Benny, he mouthed Mie, Faith Mie, he called her, pulling her into his arms and kissing her gently on the neck. The night had come to an end, leaving an indelible memory for both of them to cherish for the rest of their lives. Now you have Greek wood the rest of them.
All right.
So that was my favorite part of the book. One of them was that date. And another part was when she found the piano. So And it's because I know how important growing up pianos were in the house. So when she moved after she lost her footing, and you'll have to read to find out what that was about. She had to leave the piano behind. So, but anyway.
Can I get
Miss-
my 2 hard copies signed?
Sure. Miss Joy, this is my baby daughter.
I thought that might have been her from her picture. How
Hello.
you doing?
Hello.
Hi, you guys.
Stephanie, and I'll pull up to make sure she's going to
Beethany.
Yeah, that's from the World Affairs Council.